Hey everyone, welcome back to Fireside Conspiracies. I'm Nick, your host, and this episode of QuickFire, we're going to look at a theory that's gaining traction on X, tying together several global events from the last 10 years. So grab a drink and pull up a seat as we explore the Delta 10 hypothesis. Now, just yesterday, the X account Delta 10 dropped a detailed thread that lines up perfectly with the theories we investigate here on Fireside Conspiracies. He laid out a compelling argument connecting the rapid moves in Venezuela and now Iran. Today, I'm going to walk through his framework because it highlights the kind of hidden levers, energy control, and long game architecture we love exploring on this show. And I'd recommend going to his account and reading the original post for yourself. I'll have the link in the description. So let's start with some context. First, the rise of B.R.I.C.S. It began as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. By 2026, it expanded to 10 members, including Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and the UAE. These nations represent a massive share of the global population and resources, and they're actively pushing de-dollarization, building alternative payment systems, promoting trade in local currencies, and exploring platforms that could bypass SWIFT and the dollar-dominated financial network. This directly challenges the petrodollar system, the foundation of dollar supremacy since the 1970s. See, after the gold standard ended, the U.S. struck deals, especially with Saudi Arabia, so that oil, the world's most traded commodity, would be priced and sold overwhelmingly in dollars. So buyers need dollars. They hold dollar reserves, and they buy U.S. treasuries. It creates a constant global demand for the dollar and gives the U.S. powerful leverage, including sanctions. If BRICS and aligned nations start trading oil and gas outside the dollar, say in the yen, rupees, rubles, or some new mechanism, that demand weakens, and sanctions lose their bite. Venezuela and Iran were key examples of countries selling heavy crude mostly to China, often outside the strict dollar oversight. Neutralizing those channels, as Delta 10 argues, strikes at the very heart of any de-dollarization push. Another important piece of this puzzle goes back to the Abraham Accords in 2020. Those normalization deals between Israel and several Arab states, brokered during President Trump's first term, helped quietly build a U.S.-aligned regional bloc united by shared concerns over Iranian influence. They fostered economic ties, tech cooperation, and behind-the-scenes security coordination. With Iran's recent isolation, we've already seen talks of an Abraham Accords 2.0 elevating those ties into deeper, integrated security and defense architecture across Israel and key Gulf players. In the broader pattern, this diplomatic groundwork further isolated Iran and set the stage for the rapid sequence that followed. So, with that foundation, here's the heart of Delta 10's theory. He says we should view the last 4 years not as isolated crisis, but as one connected sequence designed to remove alternatives and lock in dependencies. As he puts it, when you zoom out and view the last 4 years as a single sequence rather than isolated geopolitical events, the architecture of the grander U.S. plan becomes visible. First was Europe. The Ukraine conflict justified sanctions that collapsed Russian pipeline gas from 150 billion cubic meters to about 40. The Nord Stream was destroyed, permanently rewiring Europe's energy system. And the U.S. surged from 28% of Europe's LNG in 2021 to 58% by 25, exporting a record 111 million metric tons. Europe transformed from a customer with options into a captive market, buying its survival in dollars. Second was Syria. The fall of Assad severed a critical Belt and Road node to the Mediterranean. The planned trilateral railway linking Iran, Iraq, and Syria, meant to bypass Western maritime checkpoints, got wiped out, isolating Iran geographically. Third was Venezuela in January. The U.S. effectively gained influence over the world's largest heavy crude reserves. Our Gulf Coast refineries, built specifically for heavy sour crude, are now positioned to process hundreds of thousands of barrels daily. This captured a massive strategic reserve and strengthened U.S. dominance in refined products. Venezuela and Iran were the two major oil supply chains operating largely outside of tight dollar system control, especially in feeding China with heavy crude. Both targeted within roughly 90 days. Fourth is Iran and the Middle East energy shock. Strikes hit South Pars, the world's largest natural gas field. Retaliation damaged Qatar's Ras Laffan, the planet's single biggest LNG facility, knocking out significant capacity for years. Strait of Hormuz disruptions followed. European gas prices spiked. Asian spots doubled. And the only scaled supplier left with capacity to fill the gaps? The United States. If a successor government in Iran becomes compliant or heavily influenced, roughly 40 to 45 million barrels per day of global production comes under stronger U.S.-aligned control. In that scenario, OPEC's influence fades. Add the gas dimension, and we're looking at a hybrid petro-LNG dollar system. Long-term contracts and regasification terminals lock buyers in for decades. Europe and Pacific allies have nowhere else to pivot. And we're already seeing markets reacting. We've seen the DXY climbing, gold and Bitcoin taking hits as institutions scramble for dollars to secure energy, and the dollar is being reinforced through energy dependency. But Delta 10 goes deeper. These moves also control critical global checkpoints like Hormuz, Malacca, and others. Neutralizing Iran's overland energy bypass fully closes China's Malacca trap dilemma. With traditional sea routes vulnerable and every imported jewel potentially transiting areas the U.S. Navy can influence, China's ability to secure stable energy for its data centers and semiconductor fabrication takes a major hit. Add disruptions to helium and rare earth supplies, things key for chips and advanced manufacturing, and the pressure on a rival's compute infrastructure becomes clear. Meanwhile, the U.S., now boosted by Venezuelan reserves and domestic Gulf Coast capacity, remains energy self-sufficient. Russia feels the squeeze next. A post-conflict Iran could compete with Russian heavy crude for Asian markets at lower cost, while Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy infrastructure continue under the cover of the larger conflict. The message to Moscow is unmistakable. Then the big negotiations happen with leverage firmly on one side, energy dominance locked in, alternative systems disrupted, and the physical foundations for AI and ASI protected. Delta 10 concludes that whoever controls the energy corridors controls the monetary system, and whoever controls both ultimately shapes who builds the future first. Now, I don't know if every step was mapped out like a master plan years in advance, but as we often discuss here, whether it's the Illuminati, Vatican archives, or Skynet-like advancements in AI, movements are being made. Sometimes in the shadows, and sometimes right in front of us. And we can see them if we just step back from the small distractions and piece those things together in a bigger picture. What do y'all think? Is Delta 10 onto something with this view of a grander architecture? Diplomatic groundwork, checkpoint control, and energy dominance as the ultimate strategic shield? Or is it still mostly reactive moves and coincidence? Go ahead and drop any takes down in the comments, and be sure to check out Delta 10 on X for the full thread. A reminder to do your own research and never sell yourself short. Till next time, take care out there, and God bless.